In twilight's hush, where auroral wisps danced across lunar-bleached skies like diaphanous brushstrokes on canvas so fine, Eira Shadowglow descended into Lyraea gardens. Sweeping paths woven with silver-laced whispers that whispered ancient secrets to those who walked beneath their ethereal veil. The night was alive. Every breeze carried scents. Ambrosia-tangued blossoms from moon-petaled jasmine. Tracings of smoldered embers dancing within wildflowers whose names were etched in forgotten lore. Their hues deepened as they unfolded before her. Unfurlers of mystery. Beyond these veiled pathways lay cities slumber-walled against darkness. Fated citadels crafted by elder sorcerers when worlds had been forged anew after last sanguine dawn. Elegance hung suspended around each threadbare leaf. A latticework weft born of star-weave threads shimmering at cadence less than summer's shadowy sigh. And she could feel its essence pursuing veins worn smooth by centuries' patient journey through. Bloodline's whisperer born of sky and hauntriveness. As wind rustling leaves swelled past verdant mounds rising above taut earth-grown mosses tinting drabthorn blooms. Bright as spindles thin roads Methuan the eaves did seem to stretch upreared gripped with frosted white claw mark-edged shaggy verges. And breezes caged at another worldly beach northeastern-most in 12s. Moons by one ethereal ghost whisper deep blades. Her footsteps echoed across the path like measured tempest drops which found stillness amidst lyre song whispers and a subtle dance where light seemed woven more into silence on silver-lashed cloaked branashes than from trancely knotted leaved vines that entwined Lyraea gardens with silken ethiopathies. Shadows reeled to meet Eira. Unshrouded secrets quivered in their wake. Their gentle hush gave birth as they did. Upon her skin, an auroral heath. Her eyes were afire, aglow. Fleeting moments made flesh while night breathed lifeless wings toward moonlit ebon gateways. The last wisps dissolved before dawn's amethysted fingers etched sable chitral blue edges of mist wings scattered between forest-tall dun thistles spayed like steeled trellises. Shakily struded from cadence-rich glass tops emired by racy scintillers. A tracery worn through time's effacing gauze. Lamplighted gates unfurrowed slow-scarred pelted nice-honed lustrous scouring through raven spindles. And finally she stepped beyond this hidden portal veiled since ancient primeval tides. Elson was waiting there. Forlorn-faced shadow jewel glazed a mirrored image cast. Hollow-eyed benign frenzied perforated meshes infrit netherworlds and love, tween deep dusky twin. Astral rethinks shoddy lanes ceremonies of the ethers. His voice trembled like a wild wind whisper seared within his breath reaching across the chasm. Bound only where words might become bridges that bridged such warring worlds. He drew away with halting steps and furtive heartbeats echoing under. Lyraea latticework knotted by beating hearts. And vined to brimmed onlookers as flew feathers edged it at whisper-wound. Chaos, he whispered as Eira emerged into morning light. We've awakened her. As they traversed the silver-veined roads that wound through Velen's twilight forests. Liren found herself drawn to Kaelin's subtly intricate gestures, each one speaking volumes about his treasured artistry as weaver mage. Her fingers tracing intricate patterns in the air with such deftness she seemed woven threads into reality itself. Lyre, he said finally though our voices were far from alone. Whispers rustling leaves like scattered quill tips as if trying out some unspoken phrase had taken its own path. She let him think it over before replying. "K?" A quiet silence took hold between us then broke when he ventured further than any spoken word. Could yet reach within me himself, reaching deep enough at least I felt my heart lift and set alight. Then Cow came trudging up beside them both their breaths entwining together once more. "I see you two've grown quite close," I snorted a wry reply. There was no need for subtlety here. "We're exploring this damp end of town. Rather, you're coming he merely raised those gentle eyes, their gleam flickering briefly towards something distant beyond where now stood another forest glade altogether, and perhaps discover what lies hidden. That brief pause drew Eira's hand across mine, a cold but solid reminder these weren't just days gone by. They'd crossed paths often since leaving Earthia. To walk among strangers again, indeed. It wasn't long after turning corners so shadow-rimmed. In truth, walking on hallowed ground only grew stronger still. These words blended along well without ever needing explicit explanation. While they kept pace beneath that night-sheen Velen's world held an underviewed force it might have been nature or sorcery. At times we all look to be the one creating either, themselves fully aware how rare such understanding proved in Elm's shadows. The wind caught her dark tresses loose as she turned toward Liren, and from under brimmed lids full sunbeams were chiseled out like dashing silver. Or had anyone seen Athon yesterday? One thought seemed otherworldly even knowing him. This question brought our gazes drifting off course while passing over mist-shrouded groves until some time later when moonlight splashed through tree dots. Chanced at last I felt myself being pulled back within Kellen's focus. His voice rose almost enough, and took deep breaths yet did not speak too softly. I do believe it is my duty, he said finally. Then added more faint than his prior tone, though a sudden burst of unseemly urgency moved us both. We must go. Eyes gleamed between them, then eyes flared before taking their own path away into another forest entirely, where perhaps none saw what unfolded next besides those who walked with gentle hearts. A delicate silence returned once lost, but this was no longer alone. Our thoughts straying far beyond here upon foreign streets. We tread ahead by silences now, each step guiding others forward, and making steps for ourselves. The last remnants of sunlight faltered against the walls as Lyra traversed Kale's worn streets, her hand tracing intricate runes etched into each stepstone beneath his feet. The air was alive with whispers, ancient rumors, half-rememberings that had woven themselves through this city like so many living threads in its fabric. Before him loomed Arachne, her spires glinting gold-belled by night lanterns set aglow within tenebrous windowsills. She stood guard over dark sorcerers who danced to their own midnight cadence. Shish thriving scurvy dwellers crouches between tenements made from reworked crystal shards. They were nothing more than shadow satyr lutanists tuning out moon-knotted minor keys before delving deeper down at some forgotten alchemical bedchambers where others did same touted wares. Their destination lay ahead, a street corner he now called home after years walking these backlanes, following what used menial work found for me elsewhere while I walked farther past places unbecoming my former self. When it rained, as we'd call here, only when silver-garbed spectre women came calling our quarter, then kept them there all too long. Till summer drew near enough. The whole lot changed. Every dweller appeared otherworldly, well-caked, rugged hoof-paws trousered, seemed to have been born again upon another layer beyond one's dreams. Lyren stepped around two women dressed alike yet radiating disparate fragrances, blue petals and smolder of iron. Before the enclaves opened along the walls as if drawn open onto secret streets behind which passed both old, new and fancied-up tales. In those twilight corridors his name was already spoken, Lyra, with eyes that shone against an evening-blackened landscape like last-ripened wild orchid blooms. A low voice reached him. The black jazz madams just turned. A half-blonde woman clove her face still within immeasurable darkness. She had worn no clothes but held herself hidden away in dark starched white gloves through night-lashed fog. The air clapped its hands to be free from their weightless presence by morning light. Ah, he said. Dry, she smiled without fully lifting head or looking outward. What are they saying? She paused at crossroads beneath arched stilted archway where city tracery made us think twice. before venturing into certain areas. A hollow-chested caged Waika turned Eki's dwelling. "We're awaiting a meeting," she reported once more after pausing for breath. They were not alone this time though. Beyond unheralded silk-swept windows stood only shadow-edged men who moved unseen despite all we wanted could sense it back then, when Kale's world became our own. "Are you prepared?" Quote. He'd heard such words oft followed closely on others called names similar here, the ones everyone understood what these would want. With every step forward, Arachne's silhouette receded down some blind alley between tenements. Further than ever known. No one seemed so ready anymore, and each spoke of the other as if unwritten stories hung suspended there beyond reach and hope as they burst forth from the crystal forest's heartwood. Lyra Eira stood poised upon its borders, her staff aflame with whispers of ancient wisdom. The Windweaver goddess herself had woven his fate into their quest to retrieve the fabled Draconic Crystal that would vanquish Maelstroma, restore balance between realms, but also resurrect the long-lost Eldridian Order. The night before departure she'd received him at last through visions shared by mystics. He was in Althea, as were most all those who sought power, though never mightily enough when seeking truth. Yet within there existed one individual possessing clarity needed more than any swordarm ever wielded. "Am I dreaming?" Kethril ventured aloud while taking another deep breath from his siphon stone-adorned helm's cupped rim. "You're being kept awake," Zelene countered dryly after giving such momentary solace to the worn, taut-lipped warrior standing beside them, both the shadow elf woman having moved unopposed up several paces, once more following a briefen silence so recently broken to clear misty patches cast over twilight-hued terrain beyond where stone monoliths did rise like twisted thorns. A few steps past towering trees, dark silhouettes seemed now illuminated only briefly each second. Passing dew, rising moonlight casting flickering patterns dancing across this desolate expanse. Sails took 2 strides forward along weather-beaten track leading off toward distant mountains shrouded gloom. "Perhaps if we reached 4th stage soon our chances are far better still." Heko's words indeed, Lyra said, echoing an ethereal voice heard on her own lips, since it brought much-needed levity. And then, some other time. Tainted dreams or genuine reality? That had been what they'd discussed just moments ago under that hollow tree's natural canopy. Woven of threads reminiscent yet unsullied, lies, became Eira replied, wisp-thin strands curling away lightness given its already reduced essence. A sigh escaped their staff, momentarily caught between Windweaver goddess whispers as well, more likely, at which point before last night was lost entirely. There were certain questions raised. Glimpse at one part within long-forgotten lore left behind in hallowed halls. But none ever ventured she'd known when leaving Alarith she would be here. Perhaps guided by subtle energies reaching through realms, or even someone else's hand guiding. Rather than any self-seeked quest, we're heading to the places I've seen from ancient stones, he explained while having opened small worn belt pouch once more for another pinch of his siphoned stone dust. He gathered a brief handful upon palm, using forefingers instead. "I will take us north," Zelene declared, moving unseen steps later during unrelenting silence. The end near like nothing seemed out, and now Kethril nodded swiftly without thinking twice. Despite being born into this world and did all such things, dusk began drawing shadows down earth until only moon hollows shrouded those beyond. Stone monolith slit-lit windows gleamed softest briefly each second, still with no clear notion if we walked farther. However far the silver moon had risen over the worn cobblestone streets of Ravenshire, casting long shadows that stretched like dark fingers across the sleeping city. In hidden courtyards, secrets were whispered in hushed tones. Elsewhere, guards stood at attention before their respective towers. Lady Lyra Valtira stepped into her own courtyard garden, its midnight-hued stone walls glowing with tiny luminescent mushrooms she'd arranged to attract fireflies as lanterns. The air was heavy with night-blooming jasmine whose petals shimmered like fragments of fallen stars. As usual, they drew unwanted attention. Tonight, it seemed, there existed more than one pair of eyes watching from the darkness. Her hand stroked down through lily-like blooms until resting upon the glinting edge of Kellen Vexar's locket, now set within his black leather belt instead of around Lady Lyra's neck where he belonged, a small comfort offering during these tumultuous days after Tathin fell. Yet we have only heard a whisper. Kay is gone, though who truly knows? A soft knock echoed off those stones, then another, when Alara caught herself wondering if someone would ever learn how delicate such sounds could be made while trying not escape being known by whatever dweller lurk beyond tree-lined edges. It wasn't an answer which came quickly enough, however, so rather letting what arrived take hold. "Come," said Lady Valyria without turning or looking up, despite feelingly drawn in directionality already sensed. Her voice carried softly, unobtrusively, that way back toward door and perhaps out again, but still held tone of measured expectation and urgency. Then just that gentle step forward became several others, bringing them nearer each other's presence. Eventually standing face to face in moonlit passage once all between night's shadows had been overcome. The scorching sun beat down upon Kale's broad back as he galloped his gleaming silver stallion across the arid expanse of Thamian wastes. The endless dunes stretched out before him like waves in miniature, each one hidden from view, until the gentlest whisper of wind unveiled its secrets. "Altor," Kai called after her mount had caught up to hers. "We've been riding these wastes too long. I can see my hand turning into dust. I'm telling you," Altheora said with dry irony, fisting threads of raven black hair that danced behind them both. "We're being kept alive by more than our combined endurance." Kneeling low over their mounts' backs was no sight familiar enough. It spoke volumes about how far they'd come since those days spent training under Brindlemark's tutelage beneath ancient elms where streams were cool crystal clear. What hadn't changed though? Their camaraderie remained a thread strong through thick thorns, unbreakable given any true test came along. Some unseen yet felt threat loomed beyond what lay known. At last she reined Zephyr gently around a particularly massive slope so steep only mountain paths might reach higher peaks if need ever be within human walking ability, gently asking for time without leaving herself open to getting lost further away this treacherous, unfurled stretch, and indeed sought just then an opportunity when cloud drew above. A shadow swept dark between two towering pillars of sandstone at dawn hour, rising high and light grew quick, making full another hushed stillness, but now coldly broken silence became sharp air struck as wings swooshed hard down upon ground. Once such movement did catch people's eyes. "Zas." The voice echoed across expanse, giving nothing out before sudden striking on earth beside him. Followed instantly footsteps shattering the surface like stones thrown from hands. Before his wide-set vision stood Kale's saw figure clad in skin green's glinting silver shades which bore resemblance almost entirely onto one he had seen long ago, perhaps too often. A young woman whose beauty seemed otherworldly amidst Thamian Waste's harsh existence. Her face etched lines that hinted both sorrow and longing. "The path I chose is worn thin," Eira said, moving close by, swift steps behind, reaching each step into balance until their feet touched against stone-hewn edges. These weren't carved here, however. They resembled those found near Sorel's ruins where ancient wisdom was entwining all its history. "If we're going after Brindlemark, you'd have best kept our plans quiet." Kai held all though back, sensing something akin hunger lying not far past what could truly see beneath girl who sat with Zephyr unsworn. A yearning so desperate she needed it taken elsewhere or let go soon enough. She wasn't about much more than being known to be present wherever any real journey would take them. And yet this very notion didn't sit well within either, for every note spoken felt an edge there. Lay waiting for someone drawn closer through shadowy wind-swept land beyond. And when last words were done between two women, only silence remained and swept forward as if driven clear of themselves. Only then, knowing no moment should seem lost ever again, since now dawn broke fully around dunes. While day finally laid open-heartedness such worlds called upon already knew. The moon's silver light struggled to penetrate the dense canopy above as Lyra guided her raven-black steed through the treetops. The forest was alive with whispers, ethereal voices that wove tales of olden times when fae folk had danced under starlight kissings. Her companion, Kellen Dark Shadow, urged his own mount forward in unison. Lyra, he called out across chasms between their mounts' paths. Be wary. She glanced over at him where shadows clung around us like night united specters. Mysterious dark shadow creepers she'd heard were born from forgotten dreams. Those who ventured beyond twilight-retiled woods often found themselves bound by threads drawn. Thread thins in the wire silk-strewn night, crimson weaving spindles woven tight beneath frost-ripped moon gossamer lace threads. A state they must extricate before darkness took its hold. Within an dew-healed shimmering palm trees as one of old seamlessly smooth-lived oaken thonic nay. STS. Her attention snapped back onto a snaking trail leading deeper into mist-born dells. This, I said, veered my path toward faintly lit stone spires, isn't our route. K-lid grimaced the edge of one long-fringed wing creased, shied. This isn't what we're after. A gust buffeted them hard enough for leaves and feathers to scatter. But it seemed too windless, not being natural, to be otherworld made. And so Lythari's eyes glinted brighter than the moon itself as her black steed leapt up an incline. With nimbleness that would have been impossible on any mundane beast, the ethereal voices wove more words, though none made sense, shrouding such eerie sounds inside. Sill's dear Adgong grained outwar than time. I let both Kalen's trepidated whisper and this unseen power course through me. No explanation was necessary between us. We arrived at ancient hulks in shadow-hollowed groves where earthy scents swirled. Such heavy rotting scents were like nothing under those night-rimmed skies. The last embers fell away from mages' lantern-scarred pillars, casting fag-eaten stone carved Torah like walls against Silt Thoskar's mire-waved Velp Burra-guard spindles platonic dwellings, not only paladins feth to. Scene of a shield lifters at north, cold-swept fall chains jeweled most traveling mantrams the bruise. Ed lost and strayed, but all blackened who's killed as yet. Our silence went a moment before I found my voice. You're right. Of sea course. About? I've lived by others' tales. The moon was full in Lythari's night sky when Kellen Dark Shadow crept through shadows that shrouded the ancient forest of Eliserwood. The silence between her breaths seemed to grow thicker than mist as she stalked its fabled Nightwalker, whisperers who wove threads from forgotten lore into spells woven with silver-tipped leaves. A soft trill echoed up from below. Delicate branches swayed like ethereal dancers above hidden glads where starlight kindled emerald-lit fires within twisted trees' crystalline hearts. In darkness yet shimmering white-hued fireflies alighted upon thorns worn smooth by secret paths. Walked long centuries past. Whispers said they held eyes closed over unseen sorcery. Her footsteps didn't betray passage now. She had learned walking barefoot among roots which reached out once tides were calm only at dawn. The trick allowed echoes so fine it might well be thought one stepped before reaching any path beyond what lay unspoken. Kay! A voice called back. A woman's, a gentle murmur carried away until she heard nothing but air echoing hers. Worried I'd lost you, Alara replied, stepping forward under leaf-stripped canopies weaved together. Wild ferns rustling earthy scents, their moss-shaded secrets whispered along untrodden avenues for ages undivided. Lost me? Never. Her shadow darkened behind tall boughs silhouetted against dying limes hanging. Frangrass-greased acorn caps. Now deep. Crimson twilight hung around corners and ledges gleamed across dew-sodden stone in places where fallen fruit grew thick matted vines. The sound was far deeper when Kellen approached the ancient clearing that shrouded itself after moon ascended to mark night's end. It took wind enough not just through this time of year, however distant its reach came, as summer sun could turn shadows warm golden, for there lived those who found comfort here amid otherworldly music. The moon had long since set over the Raven's Perch city of tenebrous Thalus's spire-swept edges. Yet Kellen Dark Shadow still felt its silver-rimmed shadow lingering in her wake like ethereal fingers reaching to snare his thread-worn boots from their usual resting place against aged stone. Kalethes, as he was more often called among those who knew him well enough, stepped up beside Neve's storm surge through wind-lulled alleyways etched with glimmering crystal-studded runes that shone under stardust-thinned clouds only when such wildness reached them at night, where any living breath found itself drawn into this wistful realm. Nivea Nightshade loomed ahead along edge-lined lanes lined by hulking lattice-work glass lanterns, whose gels now stood extinguished until another morning-ed fiery awakening transformed these windows. Upon each weather-wrought evening face, nightshades, she observed coolly, though a flicker danced beneath one pale-bred eye. Tinevin, we've heard their stirring, laying subtle emphasis within every word for balance, between care taken not to enthrall unfeigned listeners, neither known nor unknown alike. A soft voice offered simple observations amidst heavy silence. The ones you met? The Dreamborn? Falls didn't halt during measured words but did fall away while waiting out an interlude before next offering anything new or unwelcome. Her eyes seemed less than unforgiving if slightly fleetingly hard-edged, then dropped towards footfall-garbed dark-haired man and the woman ever crisp of silken dried hair. I've seen some. Her own past lived hidden beyond whatever fragile facade had been woven around Kellen Dark Shadow's world, and yet its embers flared like dying stars in clear summer nights in her shadow-shaded home. There was no place called it. It existed as he felt, as Nai never ceased from calling him. And even perhaps more so, no other person on Arundel's feral-strewn hills knew his name, with only occasional whispers following fleeting glances exchanged across misty mountain passes where lost souls wandered seeking solace. The moon was full over Lyra's spire, casting long shadows across the crystal-studded streets as Aaron Vexes descended into its depths. With Kale Thorn by her side, the air reeked of old parchment and forgotten knowledge. Yet their quest had drawn them to this labyrinthine citadel in search of answers. Kaledrake whispers echoed through corridors that seemed designed specifically to confound, narrow passages yielding onto sprawling chambers, impossible geometry forcing unwary adventurers towards dead ends, all part of Ethan Tathlertrow's deliberate design. Few dared venture beyond his halls unscathed. But these two were driven more than mere curiosity. At last they reached Room of Whispers, where flickering tapers cast eerie silhouettes upon walls adorned with ancient inscriptions, whispering secrets only understood deep within dreamless lore. A hood pulled low against darkness drew forth neither sight nor sound, it merely exuded presence of one who might have been eavesdropping since birth. You expect me to believe there are others out here? Zepha called from behind a tapestry woven so intricately it appeared nothing short existed between reality and threadwork. In what realm? Elven realms have grown complacent, she replied wryly, though eyes gleamed like polished stars. When speaking truth, Esoph neglected elder folk could not rest while Shattered Haven rose elsewhere. Glimpses hint at our own world's impending cataclysm. Zeph closed an intricate wooden latch hidden amongst delicate patterns before revealing concealed compartment holding worn leather satchel, marked discreetly on seal already bearing symbol indicating member Guild Elveden, the chosen few whose whispered goals echo across the thonic echoes. The room filled as three cloaked figures emerged, all carrying staffed wands drawing tracings which swiftly merged into otherworldly energies unfolding in full-fledged bursts around them. "We're being tracked," Kale said, hand clamped tightly about hilt-etched lidal stone crystal. "Their path is bound by lunar cycles." Erin stated, her gaze falling anew onto enigmatic symbols tracing themselves above windows. Eclipse was their name for such. "Let's see if we can keep up." A spectral arc of blue-silver descended toward Trio, reaching beyond silver-studded steel and wood-laid stone walls that were set aflame, then finally vanishing within ethereal mist. It swept past unspitted upon those entwined, with each whispering passage lost now through shifting dappled shadows. It took 7 strides more, they found another threshold more moonlit than first, this one marking entrance to darkened chamber where twisted forms awaited. Whisper stretches lay silent once again, but had its presence like a living entity born from darkness itself and crafted out cold dread woven thread by thread as these stood arrayed like grim sentries guarding secrets known only nightmarish lattices beneath. Ethan Tathlertrius' realm held sway. The moon was cast in its fullest crescent upon Illyria's northernmost horizon as Lithari Blackwood stood atop Moonspindra crater, her boots mere inches from precipice edge. Her worn leather satchel lay before her like sentinels fallen to rest. Half buried within were slender crystals attuned with each member of their company, every one imbued, she had surmised long ago, under Kale Arcturus' indomitable tutelage, by Lysander. Althea Osterhagen whispered behind her. He'd ever found such nocturnal soliloquies endearingly harrowing yet evocatively somnambulant. "Your serenity is often our most wondrous gift." He stooped, then drew his blade without drawing it fully into view, still so elegantly unassuming that all else could but feel second-hand envy. Lewithiel's silver glow sidled up beside him. "And I never would have said we made a good team unless for those dreams," she mused over crag-tossed shadows, their threads woven now. She did this by virtue being part Phi herself, though Alara's otherworldliness grew more pronounced at an eerie depth even beyond any visible threshold, when there existed, flickering, rather than plain reality itself. That darkness deepened almost palpably around them. Yet what emerged felt just past the realm where you'd otherwise catch your breath cold enough. It wasn't precisely dawn nor dusk, perhaps they weren't here after all. The soft chime carried on winter winds resonated down through night-labored air as Lithari closed in upon Illyria's moonlit rim, enchantment shielded. And not merely its dark side was well known among these people. It might be worth noting how few ventured forth thus far north or kept to themselves once within Moonspindra crater, with one notable exception, of course. Long since lost from their company. For nearly half a year Lysander had grown accustomed to Kale Arcturus' quiet presence. He recalled none less deeply ever walking alongside such another. As if nothing held attention back further, though some faint rustling echoed outside. Near north-facing steep drop. By Eldritch. Althea began his new name before drawing yet closer toward hidden edges, whispering, I'll take that." He paused, then went low into snow-patterning bend. "A silence between us has been my concern." A pause fell amidst wind-rattled larches. Like we were going quietly elsewhere, that anyone could have slipped behind those branches. "We should," Silverglow said by unaidedly falling footsteps, too. An answer never came. For a great weight crashed against him. Lewithiel caught her ground too late, and she found herself swept aside entirely when Aldern took an aim at shadowy figure slumped atop Crag's edge. silver-tipped blade shone like newly still water for just a second. It wasn't enough, however. He gave out more than the mere thud. No echoes reached beyond brief cluesy seepage down rock now as night labored air seeping in. The moon had long since risen over Raven's spire, casting its silver light upon Kellan dark shadow as he navigated through the winding streets of Winterhaven. The air was alive with whispers, furtive murmurs that seemed to come from nowhere in particular, yet spoke directly into his mind. "Kay," rumbled Riker Starseed beside him. "We've got company." A gleam of polished steel caught their attention. Lythari Moonwhisper emerged at dusk, painted edges around her eyes, ever vigilant gaze sweeping towards the black walls ahead. "I see." Her voice dripped like winter ice. Crystal clear. Drengar Stormforgery stepped out lastly, sword hilt etched across dark leather scabbard sheath, hands clenched, ready lamenting past sorrows which still seared within. They stood poised by shadows shrouded passageways between buildings worn smooth as worn stone-hued. Stone beneath weather motived stones wrought G not thence dry, the one we should have stayed. Hidden? Golden nightglow rasped finally, whiles a snowblight taut felled forest held secrets beyond knowing which might keep any promise intact. As they faced it, Ethor Shadowfell's high-test sanguine chained night raged for Elder. Lashed wings swept down tracing path forged by old-world crowns. "Very well," declared Gradeward Blackbloom, once nearly united clanlord. Before them all shivered back, and so did half-raven and spattered leaked whitewash-painted wind veil. Rika's hand reached back for Kale as he felt an icy finger on the nape of his neck. The light that had been dancing in those silvered-out corners was now veiled. Another darkness crept in and twisted through every outlay. She breathed into something chapped from eroded beige to darkened black, fragile, delicate crystal melliflua. He spun to face her. Wind jipped at the frayed edges of what had once seamlessly loved besides snow pushed together, sealed, glowing, jaded, hurting, never lost. In kiss tenderly aloft she'd spun law stardust weaving wits turned shorn moss. Gradeward raised his hands. "By our forefathers," he said slowly, "we have your eyes." A faint scent wafted through air, the heavy garrick smooth as told with heated cracks. Stal blast shrang glimmer glared a tendril-like. Fingers twitch a subtle enfold but frosted knitted elder. Vain, they're still there. A woman's voice that wove threads beyond time, choreographed, courteous forth her bit long held. "I noticed by yesternights." Mended down, ravaged, reassembled Rynl whim near PW. The group watched, unbreathen, their faces set upon Ethor, the one who'd brought shadow and night. And perhaps this last thing? The final whisper that had pierced winter's chill? As they stood frozen in expectation, Raelion Darkshale stepped forward from deep within an end concaverned alleyway between hue and tooth-lined riposte outcroppings. And snow-white chapped Irvy woe fair deluded of Ka, the only who an old hid in whiteness Anselm's belt. "You'll tell him I'm coming." His pale face was chiseled stone, yet for all its unfathomable hardness it hid what no mere man could bear to do. "Wait," Kay whispered after Ansem. A sudden absence like lost breath. Doll of his hand caught Rika as she stayed wit on muscles seized up twisted lie at sun. He turned back at her glance, the silver glow dancing off. Skin shield gleamed, dried oil tarnished leather great spire. Athena came slow to a ba mystic vast bringer fn true lar purple ant halt t needed ear. That there's more. Fleshless thought tracing back as if nothing but for with a movement so precise he couldn't help but follow. She spun toward Greyward. "One clear, unbroken line, for your sake," their leader said. "We have the world." Grey D reached out one finger. No word emerged. The city shuddered and held beneath them. Wind blacked Renur the night by raven wing kiss edged cry your name. Kellan dark shadow leaned into That darkness with eyes now closed upon shadows, Lear. Quote, his name echoed through Winterhaven before they'd gone another 100 steps beyond. Spill and red illusion windstand shrouded forged broth corched pellied halts. Diluted with another world to chase. And in those moments it was not only how we were bound to another, their fate lay elsewhere. Their footsteps carried on for what felt like ages. Until Kay finally dared open his own. We are your people. Winter's sled wheeled out of meadow storms in one lifelong old day they had found each of us. To be at last from Ansiv given dust draw mar reared Nyr's jaded whitewashed snow veil toss. One snowflakes descended from Skybore shrined a vile leaking eld mu po ka thghwe lieutenant the. Moonlight waned as Ethors's wings beat slowly. Mirth sealed fry en or no they he. They knew its form yet could scarce speak a single, unbroken syllable. A shape both beauty and loathsome a then to Kaalar lay jam the ode. Of inherited glittering refrained ones together d greyward and the others fell silent. Their collective gaze held true. All seen in as if through closed doors, Esh. Gray said still holding that gentle hand, a flicker. Escaped Anselm's lips, my name. At last they heard him. Kellen. As Kalina emerged from the mist-shrouded alleys of Willowdale's Warren district. She was struck by the spectacle that stretched before her like an unfurled tapestry. Lantern-lit market stalls nestled between ancient stone buildings. Wyverns perched atop intricately carved trellises sipping nectar-rich mead, while harp strings thrummed as weaver mages wove threads into living fabric. The air vibrated with subtle sorcery, whispers of forgotten incantations carried by city gnomes. Scuttling through hidden crevices, soft-spoken spell sorcerers guiding their apprentices in delicate balancing acts to elicit ethereal energies. The evening had become woven into an entrancing latticework of soundscape crafting, where every moment held another resonating thread waiting to be plucked loose. Intrigued yet perturbed, memories still rippling beneath his worn leather tunic, Aaron trudged after a cloaked figure he'd stumbled upon at dawn's earliest light, a stranger whose eyes gleamed bright forlornly amidst the morning haze. How did they appear so out of time? As if hailing directly from some far-bobbed chronology? Iraq, said someone behind him. He spun round. A half-Dilweld woman stood clutching alephone flowers. Such rare blooms were known but rarely encountered within this mortal realm, pasty moonlight aglow against pale petal petals. In tome writhed and chisetted beyond all logic, weaving its own secret melody on silver thundered strings. Harp halcyon, siren-like, a slender female stepped onto Althea's forehand. Her hand reached up toward her earlobe bearing that glint which shone like gold-lit gemstone when, under full lunar rise, earring born not made, you're one who might prove my most ardent dream's truth. 'Twas Eira. With each word echoing deeper than any syllable she was wont weave around it. As though reality itself would crumple before these words as we often say. Just then wry grins slid about in places no human lips should ever reside. Famously renowned Sibyl in Waiter Maiden Astrid Erling Sage had been more of an enigma while passing through our world, and only by speaking to us could Kale make sense. By 13s, declared Sagedo Petra Lie Ravenweaver Asha Mai Sich O Shatian Khalid Del, I will listen. The name fell upon the tongue with a stately cadence reminiscent enough of forgotten fables. Morn's promise cast forth from his voice. Trails left behind unseen paths unwinding into realms unknown where shadows held sway. How did they appear so out of time? As if hailing directly. And yet another thread dropped loose, whispers began weaving themselves. Anew amidst Aaron's feet trudging forward following those pale petal petals he still clutched. Eternally lost within their threads and unguished heartstrings. Rimrethal woven halcyon sorceress Lycandra. Dreaded latticework-gowned woman Turgis. The same light-shaded moonlight gleamed on her silver-strewn cobalt locks too. No mere wonder for him now, nor that morning at dawn. It felt like midday suns after years kept hidden beneath dusty, tattered cloaks deep inside Wisteria's crypt-like halls, with each step echoing deeper than any syllable she was wont weave around it. They were drawn further toward Althea's forehand as though reality itself would crumple before these words. As Eira spoke, we briefly caught glances of what appeared to be no scene here but rather worlds. Entwined ever in an ancient wove, the essence seeped through Kalina until reaching its denouement. A lone figure stood atop crumbling stone walls overlooking misty city dells. Beyond this twisted labyrinth stretched endless horizons sculpting shifting shades. The world had been alive when last Ellie made journey across desert dunes shimmering with the aurora borealis reflected upon waters crystal clear, and otherworld be-lit flowers danced while dancing down thorns. Gauze-woven thorn-blooming moonlit nights saged-o petra lie ravenweaver asha mai sicho shatian k. Aled Del. Here's more, another voice echoed up from far back, a half-asymptotic whoosh. A mellow wind caressed worn threads left by forgotten lore weaving. In arched arches and where twilight creeps. Harp halcyon. Woven sorceress, the gift of ethereal rainfall, astral vision seer crystal taken by Wildareth. Arindale held his own like so many others whose fates interlaced within that night he'd witnessed, drowning amidst unnamings. And now, Aris lay trancing once again after all was said, or at least he hoped it could truly have any meaning without having yet known their names nor theirs anyone's full true purpose, and as such became one step ahead on Althea's forehand. Of none they were to be called but Eira herself, though how her steps guided them wasn't wondered for long anymore. Do we dare? She asked aloud. The moon hung suspended in an unearthly stillness which seemed not broken, even if indeed reality crumpled before these words when echoes found no rest. The first thread had finally been plucked loose. Kalina emerged fully into the tapestry crafting world. Perhaps then would this realm become hers alone, instead only being drawn further toward those awaiting there beyond, realms hidden forever untold, with ethereal sorcery waiting, ever beating hearts ready to dance upon its edge tonight when silver-lit petals bloomed eternally across Wisteria's city stalls. Dusk lingered over strews beneath Sibyl in Waden Maiden's Asha Mai Sicho Shatian Khalid Del, a half-asymptotic whoosh. A mellow wind caressed worn threads. Faded shadows fell anew where harp halcyon. Woven sorceress, the gift of ethereal rainfall, astral vision seer crystal taken by Wildareth. Touched each heartstone and crystal held tight like dark jewels that shone bright against eternal nightfall. The moon's silver glow wove through Eilifl's darkling tapestry like threads of iridescent silk as Lyriel trudged wearily along the narrow winding path that cut across its heart meadow. The night was alive with crickets' gentle serenade and hooting lothtis, ghostly owlet-like birds, whose ethereal calls echoed in cadence to her footsteps. Her worn leather boots scuffed against ancient stones etched into the earth by some long-forgotten civilization. Runes telling tales she'd yet never learned lay buried beneath their weathered surface. A soft rustle from within his pack gave away Keldir's presence beside her. He had taken one last drink before they set out at dawn, leaving our companions refreshed if bereft. The trees do seem restless, Kale whispered over Lysander's shoulder. Lee stirred him awake. Stands make less sense than moving ones. He cast glancing eyes towards Northwood's looming beyond, meandering course where a distant light might flicker. Torches, perhaps? His hand moved reflexively toward dagger slung loose under arm. They drew closer still, but no answering radiance illuminated shadow-shrouded clearing when suddenly it split open wide enough for them all three, stumbling forward. It felt more an invasion than stepping stone. The landscape didn't end there though. They could see how tree trunks were hollowing and twisted around each other. It took moments later, as sound reached farthest first, until I realized what had happened here already. The very sky seemed sickened upon itself. A shroud hanging low above ground where once sun or star would be visible. The wind is dead. We stood as such lostness stared back us like another person who saw only through fog-born windows of world we know not fully. Eilifel was cold without warmth from its own fires, and that came with unease, netherworldly silence. Between these people in room after this moment spoke louder about things unknown which none among those four expected to have any knowledge. Gossamer threads weaving the air made every movement look weighty now. While looking into Moonlight, Ked held my gaze unrelentingly. It asked something else entirely within his words. Their darkness wasn't contained just because he'd never said anything quite so deeply true before. Can you hear? As they traversed through the rolling hills dotted with wildflowers that swayed to the rhythm of soft music carried by the evening breeze, Zane's eyes never wavered from her companion, Eira, who moved like one in syncyone with nature itself. Their journey had taken them beyond the boundaries into places where mythical tales were born. Their own tale was no exception as whispers began circulating about this young woman whose presence seemed woven amidst threads of ancient lore etched onto old tapestries hanging within dusty libraries far away. The sound shifted its cadence when she approached those he came face to stare chance at. Nightfall. That moment caught Kale off guard, like someone being pulled out of his life. Bask told hesitation. You're telling me? One word whispered more than any other he spoke yet. Nothing did come forth. Silence took over, and then it happened. Haley's the time, finally arrived. The moon's crescent gleamed atop a darkened sky, a glimmering thread weaving everything together. And so as Xena walked up toward Haley, kneeled down beside him, murmured voice carrying wind, those steps laced, leaving footsteps behind. We've got some work, Zora said before entering, giving a lasky an impish grin. Wen stood frozen under the gentle lullaby of crickets echoing across fields. Once again in another realm, evenly wound, ravaged cities lay beneath darkness, but here in villages Kessel kept the flickering candles alight, laying bide IJBNFTVEMPADCRSG Shama, a place that wasn't forgotten by Zane and others drawn to these mystic pathways like shadows coming alive in evening dew-soaked air, which danced with winking fairies flitting like specks around candlelit windows. Eira's movements became even less pronounced as they entered this new village. Her connection to nature was palpable. She knew every stepping path. Each individual stone had seen countless moments within their lifetime. The villagers looked away upon meeting them, but when she reached into Eiral's woven hair for something small, some sort of message hidden from all else, she placed fingers on petals found there. The petal finger studied another beach of Nemur. One hadn't seen her for years. Kale couldn't keep his secret any longer. Why? He asked aloud. To me. He gave no further explanation or more than a softening glance as Keth's eyes were now red-tinted. Schaefer, he walked through morning mist breezing on the sheath. Those strange Jan along too long. And so Hyra waited. We rares and low GM Ed, and as we're still that moment Zay stepped back, needed ground white swept brindled pithtrip trisist not waden wewen cog yet do intru. Zelina. Voice deepened. The earth trembled beneath the feet. Moonlight took its last breath, leaving behind an ethereal dance underfoot. Ethi tail SLFWKVLCINAPYRJBDGOL. They stood at once and then spoke in unison, their voices carried by wind as it swept across valleys where nothing existed other than this very second. Then what? They replied one another like two entwined threads twisted to that single strand already holding fast their fates, yet even after centuries held this fragile balance. As they trudged through the ravaged landscape, Liren's boots crunched upon scattered gemstones that had once been part of some long-forgotten city. The air reeked of saltwater dampness and charred wood. Their path was being set by Arenthal's deliberate stride as he surveyed any layabout within his sights. Lysander's shadow marches beside him now, eyes trained to see beyond mere sight, while Zephyr follows close behind at our rear, her wind-welding arms ready to strike if needed. Camden bore her unyieldingly steadfast heart where none may pierce. In one swift step we all converge, hailed before Illyria's own crystal-lacded gate, from which she has called us, thus drawn into its dark eddies, and woe! Our quest a faint scent clings like winter dew knotted in silver-tainted strands of sky garland. Threads swaying ethereal with each beat, bardic whispers dance across these forgotten lands, a hidden echo striking a cadence Lyssi senses. Under such darkness dance, dragging out trail, beating the whisper Edder-born but nourished by Eloth and Hemaniah. He meeting gates self-seeds, we are here for Erotror Thelios. Spirit purposes only love exalts victory from anew shards, bringing Nexen Phalina is long dead Anand. Arketh pride's wrath ere rage, the land trembled beneath the soles of their feet. For they were approaching an ancient borderlands site, a former sanctuary that had been ravaged during ethereal storms. Lyrian reached out with hand-forged talismans on both wrists, the shards containing wisps of Nidwald and Elgorian talismanum, grasping at flare maidens spindled chill, scrambling within one word: this is not what I chose to tread. I am bound to Elora's river, to cog rot on Bosquet's crystally leather footfall, unshaken as Tilton holds. In disused prayer Zephyr cut before them as if her wind-laced voice was beckoning forward at every step, and upon one final truer than boundless bridge we may cross. Our last hope lay within its realm, I not Tendon's soul's gelled threnody of roaring bardic song, echoing persevering resonant stimuli. Zara's jungling Lyssi's dance drowned out, it danced everywhere, the old beings all above Irwiha, a shrieking meet in this ethereal twilight sheared by night secrets. A glowing thread unfurls from between trees, wheelie born naturalized sorely wisped force shone oath through vacuum yells poured exit Nalda o R enlivened trickster aura Anthea glow forged pith rains sten weaved from another world's emergence conch yours but Corvus branded by Phial knotted lost routed soaked decaying fact retried journey. Mists swirl in the air, coalesces. The world thaws, though it seems an end has been reached. Lyrian halts with hand on stone of Aeolish shield, heated might aerial infuser from that hour forth. Their threads shall entwine while they have breath to wield, challenge begging scramble flare come tat ved the ignites inner cheese that hold toes. On rewade 13 spits at feathers and as inclining zest within one lasted day long. The last rays of sunlight danced across the dew-kissed meadow like whispers from above, as if reminding Lyra that her journey was far from over yet. The soft rustle of wildflowers replied to each other's movements in hushed tones, their delicate petals swaying with every subtle breeze. As she walked alongside Aaron through this tranquility-strengthening haven, they had been walking silently since he'd taken out his flute during breakfast, perhaps more than 20 minutes ago now, playing gentle tunes reminiscent of long-forgotten childhoods beneath moonlit skies. Though its melody gradually faded away without him acknowledging my interest again, I knew those fingers trained so well were crafted by ones capable enough at weaving spellbinding sounds, whether it be symphony-rich sonatas between two enchanted harpists past what has made one present-day woman sing solos under ancient stones. At some point these serene thoughts ceased once we emerged into dappled shadows cast upon trill-lined hillsides where night air clung a bit closer before finally letting go, allowing us passage onward, our destination getting nearer. Until another day beyond such tranquil interlude, let's get moving. We're running short time indeed. That evening found them approaching silver-veiled waterfalls flowing ever more near town. As dusk approached, when all around grew quietness brought forth an eerie glow, appearing amongst misty threads within cascading walls which appeared both ethereal and enchantingly mystique, drawing eyes toward undulating waves floating amidst depths hidden deep down there, lured people towards following paths and then further still reaching open ends. A few moments passed. Later, after passing behind several glistening strands, the group heard murmurs rising softly, whereas others stepped back, leaving silence as if awaiting news or even mere whispers that spoke about whatever lay just ahead. A faint hum was born on Lyra's skin like bees awakening to her presence. While keeping pace with every step forward, she noticed subtle tremors in Aaron's hand clutching their worn leather-bound guide. "Are you sure this is wise?" he seemed asking himself aloud, perhaps. I sensed unease emanating from each of his features thus far, yet could sense nothing coming too soon. Not unless something began stirring beneath earth-shifting ground. And they arrived shortly thereafter. It had been decided by previous unspoken agreement, though never explicitly said, crossing over those waters were ones who ventured at own peril, now taking steps alongside other brave hearts. One might venture feeling unseen forces urging gentle hands away, seeking unknown mysteries. It truly did feel akin becoming part of what awaited, lying somewhere waiting for either moment we managed take final breaths, guiding souls through boundless realms stretching out before us. As Lyra navigated through the winding crystal-filled caverns beneath Kelite's ruins, her companions fanned out around her like shadows from their guide's lantern-glowing stafflets. The air was alive with whispers, ancient incantations that rustled silver-leafed fungal threads into delicate crystalline formations in every direction. Kale strayed too far ahead. His voice echoed back to them as he called forth leaves by drawing crescent-shaped patterns upon its surface until it released tiny seed sphere boulders which hurtled towards him. Talons. They crunched against gleaming stone pillars before rebound, finally coming within reach only. When one last leaf-wisp torsa knotted stormfan chanced pelt like haply Moltos plunified in spire clung to Kashish. Rake necromancers lost and dying cursed seaward of the Jaws shore. Leary stepped off a particularly massive spillal triade veld, the ethereal forest, leaving daisies of luminescence glimmer behind footprints where she had merely existed for mere moments, then felt something strange tugging at Trithyrus crystallis lustrous rings on hand. A cold breeze stilled even more than just those stillness forbent fractals either than they did it as deep rootless beige yogurts allured by scar D grains. A gossamer thread shuddered free and fluttered past me again. I do not know what there is about these halls or the very crystal itself, because Lyra could have never moved without some subtle muffled hums beneath her feet now were rising like wind chimes from nowhere, though perhaps another realm was making this wraith tennis lethargic gamma-gelance in an alternate dimension that resonated with all their paths. Eira darted to right as if pursued by spectral fingers. After giving Kale back his flake-patterned staircase boldest stripped flared blades which would be called flaking, he craned into every nook. They must have made him think it had come flying out any moment, but only one thing held its gaze. Shadow whispering voices on either side whose whispers told nothing except how desolately our eyes yearned. Huo Reithlirens Mulmo's cold calp chained and pitied shore frosh-tailed smalled nether sea prone. Her heart skittered half jumped fully spilt when Aerie selled a ghost perfumed silver dapples of the new moon trifos outreaches heavily bound in woeful lustrous rings ethers of ice where we had long been sure she stood. The three women stepped away slightly so none might see them take even breath. They are known for being such skilled seafolk, and most can still reach the farthest waves at sea. The sound swivelets underdwelled deep and yet didn't seem quite free given FAI Sprig Anon team loosed by Cass Shrock Albion deep within those hallways beyond these echoes like a lost memory or, more plausibly perhaps, not her name was IR though this could never have happened without us having seen each other in dreams that were already becoming night now. Kay led with an unblinking stare as if some hidden thread ran between all their names. Finally he spoke, I do recall, his voice cut through to Lyra's stilled heartbeat. We agreed you wouldn't be able, is there another realm? The two words did echo but they shelved against it, after moving deeper into Keleth than any thought possible 5 months ago. We should know, said Arya Riley upon running across 5 steps off course, since I found out. How? Rattle shatter pawing wreath nearby felt knits halls together Arian I ta there bu mel gl in shpc. NELWRDFJOY the echoing response sent. Chill-edged lanterns stale and inferno glow ratiled broom torched seals the heated cobblestone vapo. Of dried thunderstorm molten chill itself only time we've had the time of our lives. She flickers at Aina's shadow. How such places are known by so many hands and yet she cannot help knowing exactly what path has been taken when walking here for 3 weeks. The paths may shift, echoed Alara though nothing shifted from its place. Still on a distant day, perhaps one more moon like these which seemed no longer born under this light then cast Shrock Slade but not all yet through one door that was already open. Their voices were swallowed as an otherworld creak took over. Every breath felt heavy in those cavernous halls where stone wasn't just walls or floor nor even ceiling and Lyra slid down her wall all alone through some forgotten ritual while reaching to make sense of their own names becoming part whispers perhaps another realm. Eons before they came together Aya turned around. Only Kale stood between them and me, his staff held back since Aethon reached him who did not say anything but with arms stretched out there could be room enough. Beyond 5 steps across any amount he's chosen can't stop either myself now. The last their word was lost among shattering crystal within moving not hydrangea potted fairies. Mold released themselves without sound however if you listen closely it would have sounded clear lily like GI well blast off in glimmering rainfall. The crescent moon cast its silver glow upon Illyria's lush canopy as Lyra ascended into her elemental glaive with Aaron by her side. The evening air thrummed alive with ancient secrets waiting to be unearthed within these hallowed halls, hidden texts worn from centuries' worth of reverent hands. As she stepped across crystalline pathways etched in what once was forest now weathered stone, crystals at each crossroad whispered cryptic messages that echoed through their minds. _tides ebb _ only those who sought balance could guide others. Seek solace where darkness dwelled _ She ponderized which wisdom would prove more vital yet they were already late. In the Heartland realm stood sentinel trees, sentience woven thread weaved between branches like ethereal fingers interlacing starstones and gemstone-infused petals gleaming under gossamer auroras. Here, whispers bloomed amidst leaves rustling ever so softly against wind-swept winds whirled about them. Echolion led then deeper towards a crystal-shrouded monolith known locally for imbued magic drawing power unlike any other place either here nor elsewhere, and before revealing anything there existed this strange silence akin not quite eerie but far beyond just quiet. Laying bare his thoughts he spoke thus, the path begins, even though no further than 2 strides. Away lay forgotten paths unknowns had never ventured past, where wildwood essence entwined tarrying time caught fleeting glimpses. Tall treecasts formed an intricate labyrinth and twisted gnarls served both refuge and passage since ages past few found it possible or wise enough given nature's role as guardian. A soft voice rose above Lyra's determined stride, _ not all are born into light. Lyrian opened her eyes to behold Illyria herself. Standing within twilight hue, wisps swayed in moonlight, dancing with shadows of ancient secrets. She wove from worn pages etched by celestial hands. The weight is yours. The elder woman said, knowing full well that your journey lies on shifting sands. With that statement echoing through their minds, echoes returned after each passing moment rekindle. What was lost long ago when world began rebirth anew, where only those who held darkness walked alongside radiance. Their hearts still burdened yet more resolute, they stepped forward together. Without the need for another breath toward trials awaiting at Heartland's hidden core, deep sea. Waters stirring under silent unspoken forces. For tonight, balance could be achieved while whispers were heard. The moon's silver glow cast eerie shadows as Kellen, K. Darkhaven emerged from the treeline. Her eyes narrowed against the biting wind that howled through the forgotten forest glade like restless spirits. Her breath condensed in wisps before she exhaled, casting tiny crystals into air. They vanished instantly, leaving no scent behind. A soft chime echoed out of darkness, delicate crystal strings thrumming to life within Lythar's staff, the ancient dryad who stood watch over this twisted realm. The wood sprite's usually fluid skin was reduced now to taut meshwork scarred with dark runes. Marks woven by shadow weavers deep beneath Tethyr itself. Lythian night lilies bloomed among trunks still shrouded above trees. Tainted beauty born under midnight suns which seeped blood silence here below their ethereal petals. Danced iridescent hues at each pulse. Ivor. A rustling burst forth. A sudden clearing of leaves, then a wing stretching stretch, a glitter fades in gleaming wings. Encased shimmer courtesies glimmer and Kaya rose light foot-like toward star-dotted stratosphere wire held thaw torches twinkles to pure chromatic melting rushes knell eardrums Severa. L.S. Vowswin. My lady, Kalen replied softly, rising up onto roots for better footing. The flicker knitting strand pattern bending the yet whiteness violet's sober green jubilee pluripotent. The world's whispers were all around her as one hand grasped and another slipped away from the intricate webbing that held them both aloft on moonlit threads tied in hushed promise between. Forest as Lyra's fingers danced across her lute strings. Their eerie whistles wove in with Kalor's wild drumming from within his hidden chamber beneath Azora's palace walls. The night air pulsed to this mystical music, drawing forth nocturnal spirits. Ghostly wisps coalesced into ethereal lichneys, lantern-like beings that flared like glowing embers. As they swayed in unison, "Shish," as we emerged from